What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got another card review. This time we're looking at Chaos GREPHER. We had the art revealed for this card a couple weeks ago, but we finally have the effects, and it's a pretty interesting card. Okay, let's get into it. I don't want to waste too much time. Let's just jump right in. So starting off with his effects, he is a light level 4 warrior effect monster with 1700 attack, 1600 defense. It's pretty standard for GREPHER monsters. And you can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. First effect reads, while face up on the field, this card is also dark attribute. I wish that was also engraved. That would have been really cool if it also worked engraved, because as you know, a lot of chaos boss monsters want to banish a light and a dark, or stuff like the baby dragons. Like, that could just add a little bit of versatility to the baby dragons in terms of sometimes you draw them, but you're not able to put the right attribute because they don't take either a light or a dark. They take specifically, one takes a light, one takes a dark. Helps unbrick those a little bit. Not a huge thing, but like could have been a little better. They could have gone one step further with that. Second effect reads, you can discard one light or a dark monster as cost to send a light or dark monster with a different attribute from your deck to the graveyard. But for the rest of this turn, you cannot special summon monsters with the same name the sent monster had in the graveyard. Okay, so there's kind of a lot going on here. Keep in mind, it has to be opposites. If you're sending a light, if you're discarding a light, you have to send a dark. If you're discarding a dark, you have to send a light. That actually causes a little bit of problems here, because outside of a Light Swarm build, I'm wondering how many decks even are playing a healthy number of lights and darks to make sure they're all pop-offable. You know what I mean? Like that both effects are going to be able to go through. Plus the restriction. The restriction's kind of tough, because even in a Light Swarm build, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I could discard a dark, send a wolf. Well, not really, because the wolf's not going to summon itself back. You can't do the same thing with Trick Clown. Same thing with Felice in Light Swarm builds. So that's a little awkward, but it does have some implications nonetheless. I still don't think it's a bad card. I just wonder when I compare it to something like Armageddonite, Dark GREPHER. I think the fact that they don't have restrictions really open them up. And this guy's a neg in the hand. So is Dark GREPHER, but there's no restriction on Dark GREPHER. Let's be honest, the dark attribute targets are going to be way better to send than the lights, and that's another problem is in a lot of those dark decks, you want a lot more, you end up with more darks than you do lights, and this card wants to be opened with a light more than it does a dark. There's another thing for a little bit of clunkiness, and I guess that's a little bit better, speaking to the fact that it is a light more instead of a dark. Looking at the art, it kind of looks like a dark. The fact that it's a light's kind of better, because if you played 3 of this and you opened 2, you could discard the second copy of himself, being a light, to send a dark. And like I said, the dark targets are going to be better generally, just based off of how it works, right? So yeah, I don't think it's a bad card, but like I said, I compare it to stuff like Mathematician, Armageddonite, Dark GREPHER, even what's his name, Raiden, like normal summons like those in those kinds of decks, and I wonder, is it really good enough? Is it better than those cards? I'm not sure. There may be specific situations where it is. I don't know overall, but I don't think it's obviously better or obviously worse. It's somewhere in there. So anyway, I have a cluster of cards that I picked out from the just from like skimming through light and dark monsters, just looking for just like general stuff that I thought would be respectable cards to like consider with this card. One of which is like Burning Abyss. Their whole archetype wants to be sent. The one thing to keep in mind is, like, it's not just anything that wants to be sent. It's something that wants to be sent but has an effect that isn't going to need to summon a name of itself, because that's the restriction you need to dodge around. So even something as simple as like discard a light, send a Farfa, banish a card, like, all right. I mean, it's not great, and you do have to play lights in a Burning Abyss build, which plays no lights whatsoever. It is a little bit awkward. So I don't think that's the greatest option, but it is something. And with the Whitestone of Ancients, this is actually kind of cool. I've seen Blue Eyes Chaos builds before. They already have the level 8 thing going for them. They can kind of spam level 8s to the field a little bit. And so this is like kind of interesting. You can send this, or I think Whitestone of Legend is the other one. They both give you decent effects from the grave, so those are definitely ones you can consider. You have stuff like Thunder Dragons. Now I know none of the Thunder Dragons will trigger from being just sent to the graveyard, but setting them up in grave to banish them at some point to then trigger their effects, because generally I would say a lot of the Thunder Dragon effects are better on banish than they are on like sent from field to the graveyard. So that's definitely something to consider as well, that their banish effects generally are better, just gets them nice and set up. Also, Thunder Dragon does work really well generically with Chaos decks, and Thunder Dragons have lights and darks, which is really cool. So it just kind of fits the bill on that. It's a pretty good like package to potentially combine with this card in general. Next up is Phantom Knights. This is kind of cool because that just means that this card, if you send a light off him, he could just get you a negate. Like, he could just get you a Fog Blade, which is honestly not the worst thing in the world. All the PKs just banish to get you advantage from grave. Could be worse. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it'll particularly be amazing, but, you know, as far as utility goes, yeah, just get yourself a Fog Blade. Just throw that on top of whatever your board ends up being. Not terrible. Next up is Shaddolls. Now, this is another one that kind of becomes a little bit awkward with, you know, when you consider the fact that you need to play lights to even make this possible. A lot of Shaddol decks just ends up being a lot of darks, some lights. You do need lights so that you can make Shaddol construct, but how many are you really playing? And I worry that cards like these almost make you have to compensate in terms of deck building just to make the card more live, more consistent, but like you're overall making your strategy worse, your deck worse as a whole. So Shaddol is just another one, just because you could send Squamana could send something else, and even if you wanted to special summon the other thing you sent, that's not the card you sent, that's not the card that's under the restriction, so it would still, you know, work just fine. Next up we have Damage Juggler. This one's a good one because it's one of the better light targets. As I said, there's a lot of good dark targets, there's only a few good light targets. Juggler, just because send Juggler, banish Juggler, and then you could add either a Trick Clown or a Hat Tricker. You know, extenders, you know, just free searches, not too shabby, honestly. Next up is Quatless. I actually particularly like Quatless a lot here. If you send any light, you're literally just, you got Conductor Tyranno, just right there. Because you sent Quatless. Quatless would search you for an evolution pill. You already have Quatless engraved, which is your dinosaur that you need to have engraved. And you keep in mind you discarded a light monster. So that's the other monster you needed for the evolution pill. So that's actually pretty cool in my opinion. Just drawing him with a light is just Conductor. You know, that's honestly not terrible. Next up we have zombie stuff. Now you could consider this Ballardrock, you could look at Glow Up Bulb, you could look at Necroworld Banshee. All three are dark targets. But again, I don't know. You don't need to summon any three of them, right? Because Bloom's going to summon or search something else. Ballardrock will summon itself, but not till the next turn. So again, still works around that restriction. And Banshee just gets you your field spell if you had everything else like in rotation. So it actually could be not the worst normal summon in something like zombies, but the problem is, again, just like Shaddolls, zombies are almost predominantly dark, almost dark everything, right? You got to have lights to even make this possible. You know what I mean? Or you have to have good light targets to send so that if you drew Ballardrock, Glow Up Bloom, or Banshee, you can discard them as the cost. They're not under any restrictions. They still, you know, want to be engraved in the first place. And then you had something good light to send. It'd be something to consider, but I'm not sure how overall, like, legitimately good it would be. Especially just like the deck's just not playing enough lights. You have to find them elsewhere. Maybe you play Veiler, maybe you play Gamma, just to throw lights in wherever you can and still have like somewhat useful, you know, just cards in general in the deck that still do their thing. I don't know. It's tough to say, but I do think this one is kind of interesting because I do think it does somewhat mesh with the strategy pretty well, just because they actually want to be discarded anyway. Not too bad. Nightmares are another one. Not because you want to send them, but because if you're opening them with this guy, you discard them off of him, trigger their effects on discard, and still get like a send of something. I don't know. That's pretty cool. Next up is Orcis Nightmare. This is an interesting one in particular because right now, because they don't have Harp Horror, you send Nightmare. Nightmare is probably sending you Wand, and Wand wants to summon the Nightmare back, but you can't do that. Nightmare can't be summoned this turn. But I've also heard people speculating Orcis hasn't done anything. So people are like kind of hoping that like Harp could go to 1 and that would be the extender the deck needed. But also it would make this guy way better as a normal summon in the deck because like he allows you to actually play with that that restriction under Chaos GREPHER, so that could still be something interesting. Not Nightmare, not the way it works right now. And the last card we have to look at is Absolute King Backjack. I just think he's interesting, right? Like, just generically send him. He gets you to look at the top 3 cards of your deck. You can rearrange them. And then, if you were going to mill anyway, you've got a more targeted mill, depending on how many you were going to mill, as well as the fact that if you were playing some kind of weird trap variant with this card, you would also have the bonus, free trap set off of Backjack or free mill off Backjack. Kind of cool utility. I think Backjack's a super cool card. I don't think he's particularly amazing outside of Burning Abyss builds at the moment, but who knows? I think he could come up at some point later down the line. Who am I to say? But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. I just think, like I said at the very beginning of the video, I think he's a cool card. I don't think he's bad. I just wonder, I don't think he's overly great relative to the normal summons we already have that work in chaos type builds, light and dark type decks. So we'll have to see on that, obviously. Let me know your thoughts down below. I am no chaos professional. I am no connoisseur of the chaos, so let me know your thoughts down below. If you're a little more well versed with those types of decks, let me know how good of a normal summon you think he is. Do you think his restrictions just a little bit too much? Do you think he needed a way to summon himself first, and then it would be cool? Like, if he had an ability to jump out of the hand like Dark GREPHER, would he have been much better so that he didn't have to take your normal summon every time? What is it missing? What's missing here? What does it have here? Is it good enough? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you so much for watching, as always, guys. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me in the future. And I'm rambling. I'm sorry. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.